Hey guys, if you're shopping for knives and gear, make sure you check out the description of the video you're watching right now for links to some great online retailers. There's also individual links for knives that I personally recommend. Thanks!
What's going on, YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got another interesting knife review slash knife overview to share with you guys. This is the new Ferrum Forge Stinger in Nitro V steel. What is Nitro V? We're going to talk all about that. First off, this knife was sent to me by a gentleman who wishes to remain anonymous, so I'm going to honor that. Thank you so much for sending that to me. I really appreciate it. Thank you also to my generous patrons who are supporting me right now. If you'd like to get your hands on some cool stickers and some other benefits, there's of course a link down in the description. You're supporting me in the world to me, and please follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. This knife will be included down in the description so you can pick it up. It is not expensive. They run well, I say not expensive. As compared to a lot of the other knives that I review on this channel, this one is on the less expensive side, but it'll still be considered expensive to many people. They come in at about $90. We'll talk all about the steel and what I think about this knife, but first off, as usual, let's go ahead and get some measurements. Overall length of the Ferrum Forge Stinger coming in at 7¼ inches. Blade length, 3¼ pretty good. Ferrum Forge always does a good job with ratios. Cutting edge is coming in at about 2.75 because of a very enlarged forward choil, which is welcome in my opinion. I love how Ferrum Forge does that. Not everybody's going to agree with me. That's fine. Let's go ahead and do some size comparisons. So up against the Ontario Rat Model 1, Rat 1 coming in at 8.6 inches overall. So you can see there, it's not a small knife, but it's not a huge knife either. How about up against the Spyderco PM2? Spyderco PM2 is coming in at 8.3 inches overall. How about up against the Benchmade Griptilian, or in this case, the Ritter Hogue? Ritter Hogue is coming in at 8 inches overall. And last but not least, the Spyderco Para 3. Spyderco Para 3 is also coming in at 7¼ inches overall. So now this, truthfully, this appears to be ever so slightly longer than Para 3, but you can see there the overall profile of the Stinger is very different from the Para 3, but your ergonomic lines and overall cutting edge are extremely similar. Yeah, those of you who enjoy the size and comfort of the ergonomic lines of the Para 3, you will definitely enjoy the same thing in the Stinger. How's the action of this, guys? So this knife is running on bearings. Let me get my flashlight. You can find my flashlight down in the description. Let's see if we can get that on. Wow! These lights are super bright. Let's turn that down just a little bit. See if we can see in there. Yeah, you can see we're running on bearings on the inside there. Still working out the on-rail user interface on that flashlight. Yeah, we're running on bearings, and as per usual with Ferrum Forge, the action is great. The action is snappy. The detent's tuned properly. The flipper tab is very unobtrusive, very small flipper tab, but they did it right. It's not super sharp or pointy or anything like that. The landing zone is good. I will say that because of the position of the pocket clip and that little area right here where I want to put my fingers, I find my fingers kind of running in or digging into that pocket clip just a little bit. It depends on the size of your hand. That might not be a problem for everybody, but I kind of feel that a little bit. It's funny that on deployment the pocket clip is actually the hot spot there, but it's not bad. The action's great. This isn't a fall shut action knife or anything like that. It just takes a little bit of encouragement to get it down there, but the action's fantastic. This knife is not made in the United States. This knife is made in China, at least to the best of my knowledge. Let's go ahead and do a hardware check. I'm going to get out my tools here. A couple of them are inexpensive, and I have one more expensive option. This is the Scout Leather Coat bearing driver, and I really like it, so I'm going to actually use this one today. But you can pick all of this stuff up in my description as well if you want to. The pivot is undoubtedly going to be T8. Yep, that's the case there. And then these screws that hold the scales on are actually going to be T6. I would imagine there's probably other screws underneath here that go into the backspacer. Sorry, my camera's not wanting to focus, but that's probably the case there. And I'm going to guess those are T6 as well. I don't like T6. Even if the ones underneath are T8, to get to them, you have to use T6 to get the scale off. I don't like T6, but it's not a reason not to buy the knife. Just be careful if you're going to disassemble it, because T6 bit heads and fasteners can strip easier, in my experience, than T8. Let's see here. How about carry profile? First of all, let's measure thickness. I don't always do this stuff in the same order. I just kind of whatever whatever I feel like doing first. So blade stock thickness on this guy, this is not a thick blade. Coming in at, yeah, 115, probably between 115 and 120 thousandths. Not thick at all. On the inside here, we have, I believe, steel liners. Yep, those are steel. And there's no, oh no, there is. I'm wrong. There is some milling in there. Yeah, a little bit of milling on the inside, so that's nice. This definitely does not feel like a heavyweight knife. Weight on this guy, I'm gonna guess this thing comes in at about, say 3 ounces. 2.57 ounces. That's under the mark where I consider it to be, you know, under 3 ounces to me is lightweight. I don't care if it weighs an ounce, if it weighs 2.5 ounces, it's ultra lightweight to me. So that's great. It's also on that ounce and inch mark, you know, that people go by to determine whether or not they want to carry it, if it's a good amount of blade for the amount of weight of the item. So that's great. The ratios on this are awesome. The blade to handle ratio, overall blade to handle ratio, the cutting edge to handle ratio, or cutting edge to overall length ratio is a little bit different there because of that choil, but overall ratios in this guy, excellent. It's going to make a lot of people happy. Let's go ahead and do thickness up against the Spyderco Para 3. You can see there that this knife is close, but it is a little tiny bit thinner than a Para 3. How about length and height up against two knives that are a bit awkward in the pocket? Nobody ever seems to complain about the PM2 and Para 3. You can see their length and height. This thing is a winner. Absolutely. Even with the flipper tab, it's nowhere near the same height, and it's also shorter in overall handle than both the PM2 and Para 3. So that's great. Did we get through all of that? Yeah, I think we did. Let's go ahead and take a look at the anatomy of this guy, or the aesthetics. So we have peel ply texture G10, and they are shadow boxed by the liner. I love slight shadow boxing. Why? I don't know. It adds a little bit of classiness to the aesthetic. Like if you're going to do a simple aesthetic, which truthfully Ferrum Forge is known for doing a simple, straightforward aesthetic, and honestly, I can always pick a Ferrum Forge knife out of a bunch. They have very similar profiles, large and small, and they got different designs, but the Ferrum Forge look is something that a lot of people can pick out of a bunch, and that's definitely what's present here. And they like simplicity, right? So adding little details like shadow boxing to give that liner a bit of, you know, make it show on the handle scales is welcome. Absolutely. At the same time, you get to enjoy some light texturing there on the scales. It's not aggressive or anything like that. It's going to provide a little bit of grip, but it's not really going to be enough to fray up your pants unless you're going to carry this thing exclusively for like 10 years in the exact same pair of jeans. No, it's going to be just fine. It's wonderful. I love how Ferrum Forge does their pivot. You get to see their logo there, and then it also makes it captive. So when you're going to adjust it from the other side, it's not going to be free spinning. So that's great. I don't know how I feel 100% about screws right in the middle of the blade, but for whatever reason on this knife, it's really not that bad. I mean, would it look better without these screws? Sure, but you'd have to do this as an inlay, which is not, we're not looking at a design where that's going to work necessarily, or you know, they could have done the screws back here, and I don't know. It doesn't really bother me. It's okay. On some designs, it looks worse. On this knife, I can't say that it really looks bad at all. So I'm not really going to complain there. All these edges and corners are nicely knocked down. There's nothing sharp here. Ergonomically, even back here, in the standard grip, I can get a full forefinger position. But truthfully, I'm probably going to do this with this knife. This area right here, Ferrum Forge does such an excellent job with the size of their choils. If you're going to do this, make it big enough to actually put your finger in there. Because if it's not big enough to put, well, I say your finger. Everybody's fingers are different sizes, but this one's going to accept a lot of different finger sizes. I don't have the biggest hands in the world. I wear an XL glove. I feel like a lot of people are going to have the same size hands as me or smaller, probably the majority of people. So that's nice that this is usable, because if it's not, you're just crammed back here, and then you have, you know, you sacrificed a bunch of edge for a choil that a lot of people can't get their finger in. But in this case, no, you absolutely can, and it makes it meaningful, and I like that. They also have the jimping extending pretty far up here, so that's nice because you can kind of choke up on it and get your finger in a position where you really feel secure and do that, you know, delicate or precision work that you're trying to do. That's excellent. There's a little bit of a fuller right here, and I think it's just enough. Yeah, it's just enough to get your fingernail in there and deploy it that way. It's going to shave you a little bit. You can see my shreds of my fingernail flying all over the place. You can do it if you want to. Truthfully, it's easier to just use the flipper tab. The fuller is just more of an aesthetic thing than anything else. It is sharp enough to catch your fingernail, and it will definitely catch debris, like if you're cutting into cardboard or you're cutting into food or, I don't know, whatever, you know, you're going to get pieces of whatever it is that you're cutting stuck in that fuller, and you're going to have to clean it out a little bit. That's not really that big of a deal. I don't really ever count off for that, but it's something I'm going to point out. The edges up here are nicely knocked down, so that's always welcome. The blade has sort of this acidy tumbling on it. It's kind of like a working finish on a hinder. It kind of looks like concrete. That's nice. The blade profile is excellent. This is very nearly a fully flat. In fact, it is almost completely and totally flat ground. And this does get nice and thin behind the edge. We have a tip that is not reinforced by any stretch of the imagination, so I would not be sticking that tip in and prying around. But where the geometry of the blade lacks in, you know, resilience and toughness, some of that is going to be made up for by the fact that is my sentence structure correct there? Some of that is going to be made up by the steel's toughness. Nitro V. What is Nitro V? So I invite you guys to check out Knife Steel Nerds' readout on Nitro V. Just go to Google and type in Knife Steel Nerds Nitro V. They have a nice comprehensive breakdown of that steel. So Nitro V is very similar to AEB-L, and truthfully, I was not super familiar with AEB-L, but Nitro V and AEB-L are both non-powder form steels. They are ingot form steels, but they have very, very fine grain structures. This steel is apparently right on the line for stainless, so they're classifying it as stainless. It's like 13.3% chromium. I was always under the impression that 14% and up was stainless, but I guess that with the total, you know, composition, this is still, you know, considered stainless, I guess. Maximum Rockwell hardness on this guy is 64. I don't know what this is heat treated to. I have no idea. I'm not testing it. That's not what I do on this channel. But just for your information, this steel's composition is the comparison, I guess, is like AEB-L with added nitrogen and vanadium. Now, according to Knife Steel Nerds, there wasn't enough of a benefit, you know, like there wasn't enough of a measurable difference between this and AEB-L with the added nitrogen and vanadium. Like the idea with the vanadium, I guess, was to make it a little bit more edge retentive. That's not a word. Have a little bit better edge retention. And then the nitrogen, the goal was to create better corrosion resistance, I guess. He does say at the end that more testing needs to occur, and I also might be butchering his readout or the comprehensive information that he laid out there. But basically, you know, what a lot of people want to know is how does it compare to this or that? Toughness on this thing is amazing. This has incredible toughness for being a stainless steel, so substantially tougher than steels like M390 or S35VN, but nowhere near the same level of edge retention. I think a good way to look at this is imagine 52-100. A lot of people are familiar with that steel. 52-100 is amazingly tough, doesn't have great edge retention, and is not stainless. This is substantially more stainless than 52-100, and it'll have similar edge retention. Like edge retention on this guy is not, you know, it's less than 154 cm, N690 steels like that, but it's way tougher and it's still stainless. So if those are traits and qualities that you appreciate in a knife steel, then this is definitely going to be for you. The benefit here is that this should be a breeze to sharpen. And you should almost never have an issue with chipping in the blade. So you can use this as an EDC tool, cut with it for a while, and if the edge starts to go down, it should be able to be stropped back to life in most cases. And if you have to sharpen it, it should be a breeze, it'll be mega tough, and it'll be, right on the line for stainless. So that's what you're getting with Nitro V. And that's cool. Some people will like that. I think in this geometry and this size, a lot of people really want more edge retention because this is not a knife that you're going to take out and really beat on or go crazy with, right? So added edge retention for some people is going to be the case, but the downside is that with a lot of those steels that have that incredible edge retention with all that, the carbides and the vanadium in there, it is much more difficult to sharpen. So it's an eye of the beholder thing. It depends on your usage habits, right? But that's what you're looking at there with Nitro V. So that's cool. The interesting thing in here is that it's using Nitro V, which is a new steel as of 2017. it's a steel that not a lot of people have, you know, ever seen on a knife. And so the fact that it's something different in and of itself is kind of interesting. I like that. That's pretty much it as far as the blade goes. The blade is great. The steel is perfectly acceptable in its price range, and some people are really going to like it. Moving back here, we have a backspacer that I initially assumed was G10, and it might be. I mean, you can see kind of those fibers in there. I honestly don't know. It looks like exactly what's beside it, so we're going to call it G10. The pocket clip is pretty good. This is a typical Ferrum Forge pocket clip. It is very slender. It is very low profile. It is countersunk into the scale, and that screw is recessed into the part that attaches to the frame. So that's great. It's not going to fight you in and out of the pants. It's got that little bit of a dip there. That part right there is a little bit pokey. It's not sharp. It's just pokey because it's so narrow, and you're going to run into it when you're flipping it, but that's pretty minor. I mean, honestly, in and out of the pocket, this thing is super, super friendly. No issue there whatsoever. You're going to have to dip the head of your driver into that hole and get the, you know, to get the screw out, but you know, the pocket clip is great. This is a right-handed only position. You know, it's got one position, tip up for right-handed people. Unfortunately, lefties, sorry about that. It is what it is. Lefties always kind of get screwed in the knife world, so I'm sorry about that. Centering on this guy is dead on. This is a steel liner lock, so it does not need an insert or an over travel stop because the overlay or scale acts as the over travel stop in this case. The knife is locking up at about 60%, which is understandable because we have a very thin liner and a very thin blade stock. No blade play up, down, left, or right. Really, really great. The other side of this knife looks the same as the front, other than the fact that they have a polished sort of button head pivot right there. So this is really good. There's a lot of good here. This is an excellent, I mean, I'd classify this 100% as EDC. This is a lightweight knife. It is a low profile knife. It's a thin knife. I mean, the blade geometry is one that's going to emphasize just regular cutting tasks, and it's going to be convenient and quick, right? This is good. Little things that I can complain about. The pocket clip at the tip is a little bit pokey. It might bother you sometimes on, you know, when you're flipping it. Not really that big of a deal. Stuff's definitely going to get trapped in that little fuller, whatever. Nitro V is going to be for some people and not going to be for others, right? If you're looking for a very specific type of blade steel that's going to cater perfectly to exactly what you're going to use it for, maybe Nitro V is not going to be for you. But honestly, for the vast majority of people who are going to pick this up, it'll work just fine. And by the vast majority of people, I believe 80% of people are using their knives for simple, everyday cutting tasks, and they're probably not going to notice it, not for a while, not until they have to resharpen it, right? Not really going to notice the difference between this and some other super steels out there, right? If you're going out and using this constantly every single day, you're getting it out 10 times a day to use it, yeah, you're going to notice the edge is going to wear down pretty fast and you're going to have to resharpen it, but it's going to be pretty easy to resharpen. Some people like that more than excess edge retention. I say this all the time. If you're new to the knife world, it's really easy to come to the conclusion that edge retention is king and that it is the only thing that matters. That is definitely not the case. Some people prefer, like myself included, I actually prefer a steel that is a little more well-rounded, which is why I like steels like S35 and S35VN and CPM 154 over M390, because I hate sharpening M390. I hate it. It's not worth the extra edge retention that I get to have to deal with it, right? But it depends on your experience with sharpening and how much you want to do that. A steel like this is great because for people who don't have advanced sharpening systems or don't have the time to sit down and do it or just don't want to do it, stropping this thing back to life with a leather strop with some compound on it, which I'll give you an example of something that I use. It's the leather strop with the compound on it from USA Made Blade. Yeah, you can bring a steel like this back to life pretty easily, sitting there for about, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes if you've got some minor edge damage. Yeah, you can totally bring something like this back to life, or at least put an edge back on it that's manageable and it's kind of a working edge, and then you can go about your day, right? It depends on how much you use it. I think this is just fine, and I think it's appropriate in the price range. 90 bucks, is that a fair price for this? Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of knives out there that are using a combination of G10 and steel and our liner lock running on bearings, right? Nitro V is interesting and it's different. Is it a better performer all the way around, considering all the elements, than steels that you typically see in this price range, 50 to 100 bucks? You see a lot of 9CR 18 MOV, a lot of D2, a lot of N690. We're starting to see 154 CM. To me, The steel that's preferable over this all the way around is still 154 cm, and we are starting to, Kaiser, for example, is using 154 cm in this price range. But that doesn't mean that this is not a competitor. I think a compelling reason to pick this knife up is just for the profile and the ergonomics. The blade geometry itself is excellent. I mean, yeah, this is going to be a winner for a lot of people. Would have blown me away if this thing was around 75 bucks or so. 90 bucks is not a bad price. I don't really have a problem with that. It's just, it's not absolutely mind-blowing, but it's cool. And you get that Ferrum Forge quality. Ferrum Forge is always really crisp, really clean, really nice looking, you know, lines. If you like how this looks and you're wondering, is it made well for the price range? Definitely. The steel is interesting enough, you know, in the price range, and it's got attributes that some people like. I'm starting to repeat myself. I think you guys get the hint. This knife is recommendable. You can pick this up down in the description. I will link it and all of its variants. By the way, it comes in a few different colors, so you can check those out. And then I'll also link Ferrum Forge knives in general. If you like the look at this, if you like the look of this, you'll probably enjoy Ferrum Forge knives in general as well. Guys, I think that's going to be pretty much it for today's overview and review. Be sure to follow me on Instagram. If you enjoyed this video, please leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do of course have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on this metal complex logo right there and subscribe, because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.